when it's time to heal and feel, be real. You just gotta take your time, unwind and chill. Cause now it's time to love yourself. Build emotional and mental health. Cause Black woman, it's time to heal and feel, be real.
Hey y'all, it's me, Myra, and this is a special episode. It is honoring me getting older and my birthday. And to bring us in, I just want to set the tone and just give us a chance to take some deep breaths. Let's do two more of those. Okay. Instead of rushing into a celebration, I want to take a moment to pause with y'all, our listeners, whether new or old, and thank you. When I started this podcast, I was in my 20s, and I won't give away my age now, but I'm not in my 20s. So that means that y'all have been on a journey with us of coming out of our 20s into our 30s, both me and Danica. And I just want to reflect on just y'all supporting us. That feels good. Whether you have listened to one episode, many episodes, or 5 episodes, the gratitude is still there. And on this episode, I just want to invite y'all to reflect on your becoming, right? Like you're becoming into this new age with me, but also just celebrating you along with me as a whole. And as I reflect, I invite y'all to reflect on some similar themes with me. So, the first thing I want to talk about is what this year of life gave me. This year of life, and I'll talk about it a million times, it gave me a lot of clarity. When I say clarity, I am talking about for the journey of trusting myself and how I show up in relationships, how I show up with finances, work, spiritually, mentally, all of those things. And in order to do that, because that is not a journey that you take by yourself. Those are not things that you do alone. And so what that has looked like is getting back into therapy. I found a therapist who I finally really like. I had some interesting experiences with therapists, being that I'm a therapist. So finding somebody that's a good fit, very important. Next thing was understanding the role that I play in people's lives and if I like the role or if that needed to be changed. So thinking about my role of daughter, mom, partner, sister, friend, best friend, cousin, auntie, all the things. Thinking about what I want for that to look like. Also deciding where my money should go. And what I mean by that is um, investments and savings and going out. Like, where do I want that money to go? And really having to like think about that. And those were things that at first I was like, oh, these are easy. Like, I'm just gonna jump in and do the things. First off, therapy is not easy when you have a good therapist. Like it pays off, but it is not easy. Like, let me make sure that I'm clear on that. Like, I am a therapist, and when I show up to therapy, I'm not a therapist. So I say that to say I was in the weeds doing some really hardcore work, but all in all, to say that the work that was done there kind of played a role in all the other parts of my life and me really understanding like the ways in which, again, like I said, like I want to show up and that feels in alignment with me. And something that really came up was like boundaries. Yo, I didn't know what boundaries really meant. I was tripping. I thought that boundaries were like, this is how I feel and this is what I don't want to happen. This is what I'm okay with happening. That's the bare minimum. Boundaries are communicated expectations. I forgot about the communication part. I was just having the expectation. I was tripping. But I mean, again, it's one of those things like steadily learning, figuring it out. And I think especially something that came up was how do people lean into your boundaries when it's finally communicated? And how do they align with it, being that your me is on this journey of healing and understanding myself, but maybe those people are not on the same journey and really having to understand like what it means to be a person that's on this journey interacting with people who are not. So I invite y'all to sit with that. Like, what do you feel like this year has gave you? Like, if you were to reflect with me just the course of this past year, my birthday is January 7th. So maybe you could even say like January to January. Like, what do you feel like this year has gave you? It doesn't have to be you look at 2025, but maybe a season of your life even, because seasons change also, and we change with the seasons. So I invite y'all to think of that. Now I want to shift and talk a little bit about what I am letting go of. Something that's been coming up a lot for me is letting go of the idea that my identity is attached to what I do in my to do list. Like, I feel like I am someone that has thought of myself as like really productive in ways that like are a little ridiculous as I think about it. Like, why did I feel like me getting my to do list done was almost like scratching an itch? Like, it was like I was taking a hit of the best drug ever, and it gave me like this high that I cannot describe. I actually want to do some research on that. I've been in my research bag, but I didn't research this. I am curious, why do we attach our self worth to what we can do? Or should it be what we do? What we do as far as like to do lists. Let's see what it says. Because I'm curious if it's tied to being like the eldest daughter at all, me being a helper, right, a therapist. Okay, it says, why we attach self worth to our to do list. We were praised for productivity before we were affirmed for being. Many of us learned early that love, safety, or approval showed up after we were helpful, responsible, or accomplished. Over time, your nervous system links doing equals being okay. And I can totally agree with that because when I think about it, like even with like my mom, like the way I would have this checklist of how I clean my part of the house was almost like, yes, like so much praise where I'm like, what else do I need to do? Oh, well, you can help cook. Oh, well, you can read this book. Oh, you can do this. This is it is, and the list just goes on and on and on. So I can see that. It says productivity gives an illusion of control. Checking things off of a list calms anxiety. It says I'm managing my life when things feel uncertain emotionally. Doing something concrete feels safer than sitting with ambiguity. I actually kind of like that. I don't know. I think that's something to play around with. Like thinking about how can I put things on my list that I know I for sure can get done if that does help me feel like I have a sense of control. I'm gonna play around with that one. I don't know that I disagree with or I see that as a bad thing, so I'm gonna play around with that. Capitalism quietly taught us to monetize our humanity. We live in a system that rewards output. Rest isn't celebrated, results are. So it's easy to internalize the idea that your value must be proven daily. I cannot disagree with that. I especially think about being a black woman and how it's like you don't feel pain, quote unquote, and you can do all these things. And that is so placed on us to where I feel like a lot of us really operate in that system and we kind of get stuck there. For eldest daughters slash caretakers, doing becomes protection. When you step into responsibility early, being needed can feel like being loved. Slowing down can unconsciously feel dangerous. Who am I if I'm not useful? I think they just called me out. Remember, I said, are they going to say something about eldest daughter? And here we are. Here we go. It says to do lists give quick hits of worth. Each check mark releases a little dopamine. Over time, your brain starts craving the feelings and equates it with self esteem. Yikes. Okay, so me being me, I was like, let me take a deeper dive and do some research on what we can do to help to break away from that a little bit. Okay, so it says, name the voice when it shows up. When you feel behind or unproductive, ask yourself, what story am I telling about myself right now? For example, like something I'll tell myself is like, damn girl, like you a little lazy. And I found myself being like describing myself as lazy because I like to like not do anything. And then I was talking to my therapist about it. I was like, I'm really labeling myself as something that's deemed as bad for like resting and relaxing. That's a problem. That's not okay. I invite y'all to think about that too. It says add a being list alongside your to-do list. Huh, what does that mean? Create a short daily list of things that don't produce anything. I like that. For example, I felt my feelings, I nourished my body, I said no, I did something just because I wanted to, I rested for 10 minutes. I encourage y'all to challenge yourself and ask yourself, like, what is my being list? One of my favorite things to do is to stare at the sky, whether it's I'm staring at it to try to like count the stars or I'm staring at it just because it's like a beautiful hue of blue. The blues of the earth just like do something for me. You know, when I say the blues of the earth, like I love staring at the ocean, I love staring at the sky. Like, it just feels so good. Now I kind of want to challenge myself to look at the blues of the earth every day and have that just be like a part of my being list. Y'all should do the same thing. What would be a part of your being list? Tell us in the comments. Okay, it says practice being unfinished and still okay. Intentionally leave one non urgent thing undone and notice the discomfort, the fear underneath, and the urge to prove yourself. And remind yourself nothing bad happened. I am still me. I actually feel like I had to do that, like when I had my daughter, because I was like, oh, I'm gonna make all her food from scratch, like the purees, and I would never get it done. And I'd be like, nothing bad happened. Like I still made sure that she was fed. Like she doesn't have to have homemade puree foods. We can buy the shit. She don't gotta have that. Okay. Separate identity from efficiency. Instead of saying I was productive today, try I showed up for myself today. I honored my capacity today. I lived today because language matters, especially because your brain listens. Anchor your worth in values, not tasks. Did I live in alignment with care? Did I treat myself with respect? Did I act with honesty or kindness? And I would even add like, do I want people sharing about this in my funeral? Right? Because I want people to be like, she honored her rest. She prioritized herself. She put her values first. I do not want people talking about how productive I was at my funeral. Please save that, throw it away in the trash. Okay. It says, remind yourself you don't need to earn rest, especially for Black women. Take a nap. You don't need to prove your value daily, especially for Black women. We see your value. You don't become more worthy because you did more today. Your worth existed before your to do list, and it will remain after the last one. Okay, I feel like they just went the fuck in on me on my birthday, but it's totally fine because I am going to continue to sit with that and continue to focus on what it means to let go of being so tied to my to do list and the things that I can do. And I ask y'all to do the same thing, share like, what are you feeling like you need to let go of? And to tie this together, what I'm carrying forward is this ongoing intention that I've been saying to myself. I want to say like the last 4 years, which is engaging in intentional joy. And intentional joy for me is just leaning into a little bit of what feels good daily. And sometimes intentional joy can be I took a hot bubble bath, which I'm not going based off of like that corny self care tip of taking a bubble bath. Bubble baths are really my thing. Like I eat that shit up. I have it's a whole little vibe. That can be intentional joy. Intentional joy can also be how I share with y'all. Like I love staring at the sky. It could be I got a little extra sleep. It could be I got my favorite gum. It could be I had some extra water. It could be a random gift somebody got me. Somebody randomly got me. They randomly got me this Grinch Santa Claus hat, which brought me joy. I enjoy watching The Grinch, even if it's not Christmas. trying out a new workout class, whatever. Really being intentional about like what brings joy for me is something that I'm going to carry forward because I think that I was so intentional with my to-do list. It almost feels like I'm being radical by being intentional about my joy. And I'm pretty sure that there's probably research that's linked to that too of um when you are so intentional about things that feel good. Actually, let's just look it up. Let's just look it up. What does being intentional about your joy do for dopamine? Let's see what it says. What does being intentional about joy do for dopamine? And I'm glad y'all are like sitting through this with me because when I'm getting ready to produce this episode, I didn't think of things I needed to research. I thought I'd just go off the top of my dome. And as I'm talking with y'all, I'm like, huh, that deserves to have some research behind it. So it says intentional joy impacts your dopamine by it creating predictable dopamine instead of spikes. Quick dopamine hits such as scrolling, checking off tasks, sugar, overworking creates spikes but followed by crashes. Whereas intentional joy, it brings enjoyment, laughter, creativity, rest, connection, and it's a moderate and steady dopamine release. It rebuilds dopamine sensitivity. When we're overstimulated or constantly productive, dopamine receptors can become less sensitive. That's why things stop feeling satisfying. It shifts motivation from pressure to desire. When joy is accidental or rare, dopamine becomes linked to achievement, approval, and survival. So when we're thinking about how I was sharing about the to-do list, it almost felt as though like I was getting this dopamine hit that was tied to achievement, approval, and survival. But then once I'm checking off the thing, now I'm like, okay, what's my next thing that's gonna like bring this feeling of achievement, approval, and survival? Whereas exactly like they said, the joy thing, it just carries along and continues to help you to feel good. Okay. It strengthens anticipation. When you intentionally schedule joy, like a walk, a class you like to take, time with a friend, a creative ritual, dopamine is released before the joy even happens. Okay, I didn't even know that. That's really good. So it's saying when you schedule it, the dopamine hit already starts even before you do the activity. So then you get the dopamine before the activity, during the activity, and then it sounds like it kind of just rides a wave, which is amazing. And it says anticipation alone improves mood, increases resilience, and gives your brain something to look forward to. I can agree with that. I like that. It retrains your brain to associate rest with reward. That's very key, especially with Black women, because we feel like we have to work for rest, and that's not true. Okay. Intentional joy pairs rest with positive emotions, slowly dissolving the guilt loop. I like that. I encourage y'all to think a little bit more about what joy can look like for you, slash, what are you feeling like you are carrying forward for yourself. And as we get toward the end of the episode, I want to wrap us up with just like a birthday like offering for y'all slash like affirmation. My thought is for you to remind yourself that you are a student of life, you are steadily learning, and it's important to honor the ways in which you've thought of yourself and your identity and the ways in which you've shown up and asking yourself what you want to take from that because it's not always that thing what you want to take from that but also what you want to shed and release. I invite you to really sit down with pen and paper and take a deep dive and like reflect on that. I would say that, this year for me, I'm choosing to live in a way that feels more like home. My intention for the past few years, like I shared, has been intentional joy. And now I'm leaning more into intentional homemaking within myself because I am my own home. I have to come back to myself. And so I've been really intentional of thinking about like what are things that calm my nervous system. So for me, like finances needs to be in check. That's something I'm steadily like trying to work on and redo my relationship with finances, but also as I share it with y'all, breaking away from this to-do list. I can have expectations for myself, but I shouldn't anchor my full thoughts of myself within a to-do list. And I feel like this is a conversation we can have over and over and over, and we can continue it. But I want to leave y'all with that, and again express gratitude of whether this is your first episode, your fifth, your 100th, whatever. Thank you for tuning into this podcast because it's ushered me from my 20s into my 30s, and it's also been a healing journey for myself. And it feels good to do alongside Anika. Love her to death. She's become one of my best friends from doing this podcast and then also growing these connections with y'all. So, many, many thanks. Many, many thanks for y'all tuning in to this week's episode of Black Women Healing Podcast. And I said I'm not going to jump into the celebrating and the partying, but after this, I sure am. So, I'll maybe update y'all on how that goes, right? I'll maybe update y'all. That is it for this week's episode of Black Women Healing Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. It's your favorite co-host, Danica and Myra, and we appreciate you all for listening to Black Women Healing Podcast.
If you like what you just heard, go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe on all of our platforms, which can be found in the show notes.
We appreciate every type of engagement as it creates more exposure and helps our community get this healing on the daily.
See y'all next Monday, and don't forget, we are healing on the daily.